Today we're going to be talking about multi-step inequalities, which is a continuation of Unit 2, multi-step equations and inequalities. Just a couple of things to address at the beginning of this. The first thing is we're going to be writing our answers in interval notation, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. But we're going to be using parentheses to represent numbers that are not included or open circles on graphs, and we're going to be using brackets to mean numbers that are included or a closed circle on graph. Now, this first problem should look really familiar to you. We're going to solve it the same as we would a multi-step equation. The first step is going to be to distribute our positive 4 to our parentheses. When we do that, we'll have 4x plus 12 is greater than a negative 24. Now, going through our steps for solving equations, the first thing that we're going to want to get rid of is something that is added or subtracted. To do that on this problem, we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. Our next step will look like this. We'll have 4x is greater than a negative 36. Now remember, we have a line down the middle of our problem to represent or to show us that whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Now, we have multiplication in this step right here. So to get rid of multiplication, we're going to do the opposite, which is to divide. Divide on both sides by a positive 4, and we'll be left with x is greater than a negative 9. Now, for our graph, we're going to look at our symbol. Notice that there's no line underneath of our inequality symbol. It's just an inequality. So our circle is going to be open. We're going to call this spot negative 9. And we're talking about all numbers that are greater than. So our line goes to the right to represent numbers that are bigger than a negative 9. Now, where interval notation comes in, we're starting at a negative 9. It's going to be on the left because we're not moving to the left with our arrow. So we're going to put a parenthesis to represent the fact that we're not including negative 9. And then our answers are going to go up to positive infinity. That's interval notation. Now again, with number 2, I want to show you another example. We're going to distribute a negative 3. Now this is the same process as solving equations. Once we do, we'll have x minus 3x minus 6, because negative 3 times a positive 2 is a negative 6, is greater than 4. Now, at the beginning of this problem, we've got the added step of combining like terms. So we're going to have a negative 2x minus 6 is greater than 4. Next step, again, whatever we do to one side, we have to do the other. We've got to get rid of this minus 6. To do that, we're going to add 6 to both sides. The 6's cancel, leaving us with negative 2x is greater than a positive 10. Now, in this step, I want to remind you of something that we have to do with inequalities. When we divide on both sides by a negative, we have to remember to flip our inequality sign. So x is less than a negative 5. So again, our inequality symbol doesn't have a line under it. So we have an open circle. We'll call this spot negative 5. Now, we're talking about numbers that are less than negative 5. So our graph should go to the left. For interval notation, since we're going to the left, we're going to the negative side. So that's negative infinity. And we started at a negative 5, not including 5, so we have to have parentheses around both numbers. Interval notation is probably going to be the most confusing thing for you guys for these first couple of problems, but after you get the hang of it, it'll come as second nature. Now, on number 5, these are all coming from your review sheet that are going to be posted in Edmodo. Number 5, what you've got to do is you've got to pick a side for your variable. I'm going to take all of mine to the left just because that's going to be the easiest for us to see. So to do that, I'm going to add 2x, because again, I want to cancel it out on this side, so I have to do the opposite. So plus 2x, what I'll have is 8x plus 1 is less than a positive 9. Now, in this step, we're going to subtract 1 to get rid of the 1, just following our steps for solving equations. We'll have 8x is less than a positive 8. Not 9, is less than 8. Divide by 8 on both sides. The 8's cancel, leaving us with x is less than 1. Now again, just pick any spot on the graph. We're going to have an open circle because there's no line underneath our inequality symbol. We'll call this spot 1. We're talking about numbers that are less than a positive 1. So when we write our interval notation, again, we're using parentheses. We're going to a negative infinity, and we start at a positive 1, not including 1, so it's a parenthesis. So there's all your work, your graph, and your interval notation. Now, this is the last problem that I'm going to work through for you guys, and then I'm going to let you go on the note sheet on your own. What we've got is we've got a problem that's going to require several different steps. The first step is to get rid of parentheses. Now, at the beginning of the parentheses, you'll notice that we have a negative. Anytime you have a negative in front of parentheses, what you distribute is a negative 1. So we're taking negative 1 times 2x and times this negative 7 here. So when we do that, we'll have 3 minus 2x plus 7 is less than or equal to 34 minus 6x. Now, we're going to combine like terms. 3 plus 7, which gives us 10, minus 2x is less than or equal to 34 minus 6x. Now, at this point you should know that you're going to pick a side for your variable. I'm going to move it to the left, so I'm going to add 6x. When I do that, my 6's cancel, leaving me with 10 plus 4x is less than or equal to 34. Subtract your 10 to move it to the left, or to the right, so minus 10. That'll leave us with 4x is less than or equal to 24. Divide by 4, and we'll have an answer of x is less than or equal to a positive 6. So, since it's less than or equal to, and we have the line underneath of our symbol, we're going to have a closed circle. We'll call this point 6, and we're talking about all numbers that are less than that positive 6. So our graph is going to negative infinity, and we're starting at a positive 6, but this time, since our sign is closed, or our circle is closed on our graph, we're going to put a bracket because we are including 6 in the answer. That's how interval notation works. Now, these are all the examples that I'm going to work through for you. What I want you to do is I want you just to pause this video or to come back to it if you need to, but I want you to try to solve the rest of the problems on your note sheet. There's 10 total. Some of them require a lot of steps. So if you get stuck, what I want you to do is I want you to work out at least the first step, put a star beside the problem, and we'll address it when you come into class tomorrow. Again, any questions that you have, if they're really pressing, feel free to email me or send me a message through Edmodo. It's up to you. Email is probably better. But if you have any questions that can be addressed tomorrow in class, simply put a star beside the problem and hit me up at the beginning of class.